What's up? This is Patrick of Radicards.com, and a lot of you know me as a Frank Thomas player collector. And in this video, we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about, the top 10 most interesting Frank Thomas cards I bought in 2018. Now, I started doing these videos a couple of years ago, and kind of like doing them. They're sort of fun. I get to go back through the stuff I got in a single year and just kind of pick out stuff that I think is important to me. So this video is broken down, kind of dissimilar from what I've done in the past. Usually what I do is I start with something that's maybe more common, and then I kind of just go through and trickle into the rarest item. Number 1 being the rarest, number 10 being the most common. This year, I kind of just picked and chose stuff that was what I feel is rare regardless, and I didn't really organize it by most common to most rare. But I will say that like the last 3 cards were the ones I was most after all year, with the rest of them being really interesting adds to my collection, stuff I just don't see too frequently, if ever. And I just wanted to talk about it because these cards are, of all the cards, Frank Thomas cards I bought in 2018, these 10 are the most interesting adds of my collection. So let's get straight into it here. This is 1998 Leaf Rookies and Stars, Standing Ovation Sample. Now, I don't see these too frequently at all. They're very rare. This is, I think, one of maybe 2. I don't remember if I've seen this one before I acquired this example. I knew it existed because I had put it in my database as something to look for, but I had not seen it. So when it surfaced, I had to get it. And I don't remember what I paid for it offhand without looking at my database. I keep a pretty aggressively detailed record of what I buy, when I buy, and how much I pay for it. I don't have the mental record of that on hand, but it wasn't cheap, if I recall correctly, but it was worth it because I've been after this card for a while. Again, 20 years after its release, I finally added an example. Of course, I hadn't been looking for this card all 20 years. I was out of the hobby for a couple of years in the late 90s to early 2000s, and then once I got back in, it was some amount of years before I finally identified this as one of the cards to get that was somewhat difficult to track down. So again, with the samples from the 90s, late 90s, a lot of these things were sent to dealers to promote the product and incentivize purchasing. So this may have fallen in that category in 98. 98 Leaf Rookies and Stars was a really excellent product. Lots of interesting things happening in that product. And I really dig that there are some samples to be had with some of the inserts. So this was a great ad. I love this card. Great picture of Frank Thomas in the front. Action shot, gradient, with really great hollow foil print. So this is 1998 Leaf Rookies and Stars, Standing Ovation Sample. So moving right into it here. This is the 2004 Fleer Names of the Game. So this is the blue parallel to 20. There's a bunch of different parallels. There's like a silver one, a gold one, a bunch of different print runs, like 250, 150, whatever. This is one of the rarer ones, obviously. I saw this one, and I think the bin was like really low, and so I was like, cherry pick that, immediately. It's no brainer. Great card to have. Interesting set. I started picking these up some years back, and I got one on a collection, and I acquired another one somewhere around. The first one I got was the red one, numbered to like 70 something, and I just kind of kept cherry picking the different versions. And after a while, I was like, well, let's see how many of these I can get. Still missing a couple, but these are really interesting cards. I don't put a lot of focus in game worn stuff because there's just so much of it, but I'm so far along now that it's hard to find stuff in this category that I still need that's not one of ones or crazy complex patches. Interesting about the game used stuff, the relic stuff, is I try to go for a very basic swatches because I know that at least I can feel partially confident assuming those have not been tampered with. Whereas complex, crazy, interesting, intricate swatches, I don't know. Some of the fraudsters do such a good job at swapping patches out. I can't tell what's fake and what's authentic. So I just stay away from all those complex ones altogether. and just try to go after the basic swatch, black, white, gray for Frank Thomas, or green or blue if he was on the A's or Blue Jays later in his career. But this is cool because this is a 20, and I hadn't seen one prior to this encounter, and I haven't seen one since. And I don't know, who knows if I'll see one of the other 19 out there, but these are really rare. I like this set a lot, just like the black and red combinations with the various color foil depending on the parallel that you're getting. So this is the blue one, number to 20. This is the 2004 Fleer inscribed, names of the game, blue parallel, number to 20. This is the 2004 Studio Platinum Proof, number to 10. Now, I had a fellow Frank Thomas collector. He and I go back and forth sometimes. We talk, and he's pretty aggressive. And I pinged him on Messenger, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to go after this if you don't mind. It's the last one I need to complete the run." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so he and I kind of work with one another on, hey, do you need this? Hey, no, I don't, go for it, or I'm not chasing this. Or sometimes I see things that he likes and I pass them along to him. The stuff I won't buy just because it doesn't really fit. They're Thomas cards, but I know that he collects a certain type of Thomas card, so I'll just flow stuff his way that I think he might appreciate. So this was one of the times where I was like, well, if you can help me out with this, and I'll help you out with the next whatever. And so we kind of have this like agreement to help one another out when we can. But I needed this card to finish the run. There's various different, there's like a gold, a silver, a platinum, there's base card of the proofs, right? And so it's kind of a nice like rainbow, if you will, of the cards. And so when I saw this, I was like, well, I got to get this card if I can. It wasn't cheap, it was expensive, but they printed 10 copies. So you can't be like too lenient on stuff that kind of falls into your focus or your foci. If it's such a low print run, you have to be aggressive. And I'm happy to finally get the 2004 Studio Platinum Studio Proof, number to 10. Oh gosh, this card. Okay, so this is 1998 Skybox Dugout Access. This is the Inside Access Parallel, number to 50. So back in 2000, and I think it was 12, or no, it was early 2013. That's what it was. It was like January, February, March 2013. I took a hiatus from eBay because I realized I couldn't get off of eBay and couldn't get off of wanting to buy cards for my Frank Thomas collection. And I needed like a bookshelf, and I needed a filing cabinet. I needed a bed for my apartment in LA, and I was spending all my money on cards. And so I was like, I'm going to take a 3-month hiatus and just put my money toward the things that I need to get right now. I needed like a storage cabinet. There were like 4 big things I needed to buy. And so I was like, if I just get off eBay, I can focus on those 4 big purchases for my apartment. And I did. It was great. And when I came back in like April to get onto eBay again, a fellow Frank Thomas collector had shown off in one of the groups that he had acquired this card on eBay for like a very low bin price. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never seen one. I'd always wanted to get this card. And Thomas is featured twice in the set. So he has this parallel for the other card as well, which I acquired in 2019, and it might end up on my 2019 top 10 video, who knows. But these cards are really rare, and because the parallel is just gold stamping in a subtle location along the bottom half of the front of the card, and the serial number printed on the bottom corner of the back of the card, these cards, at least I feel like there's a chance that a lot of the stuff falls through the cracks and ends up in bargain bins because people don't realize what they have because of that subtle gold foil printing. Unless you really pay close attention, if you're flipping through the pack, you might not notice it, right? And so when I saw this in 2018, I was like, well, I got to get this card. And I bid aggressively and won it, and then realized the seller had like 1 or 2 other copies that went unsold for a little bit less than what I paid for mine. I was like, oh, whatever. You don't know what you don't know. I try not to overthink stuff like that because there's no way that I can tell the future. If I did, I'd be making a lot more money. But because I can't tell the future, I don't know. I didn't know that the seller had more copies of this card, like 2 or 3 other copies. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And they were pretty good prices for what they were. Of course, higher than I'm willing to pay to get a double into the archive. Does that so that's like kind of how I think is like I got one and done. I'm out the door. Okay, fine. He still lists another one. I don't need a second copy, not at that price. So this is a really great ad, and I'm glad to finally check this card off the box. This is the 1998 Skybox Dugout Access, Inside Access, parallel to 50. This is 1999 Upper Deck Immaculate Perception triple numbered to 25. Now, back in like 2015, 14, 15, I saw one listed on eBay for hundreds of dollars. Like a buy it now with no budge, no best offer. You know when you see like that card that's listed on eBay and it just sits into perpetuity because the bin is too high and there's no OBO option? And you reach out to the seller to like ask if there's a way to like, you know, hey, would you entertain an offer? There's just crickets, like nothing. You just get nothing in return. That was this card. This card finally ended up selling to a Frank Thomas collector with pretty deep pockets. I was like, well, whatever. Maybe I'll see another one at the 25. Well, fast forward, 3 years or so, and this one surfaces, and I'm like, oh, great. And it had a bin price less than $100. I'm like, I got to buy this. At least I think it was less than $100. Again, I don't have my database on hand, but I did pretty well with this card. I was glad to bring it to archive. So there's a version of this that's a one of one that I have for another player, but obviously not Thomas. Great stuff. I really like this set with that like classic flat foil finish on the front, and the various parallels have like different color foiled integrated within the silver. There's like one with like bronze, and then there's one with like flat black foil, and then there's one with like gold foil. And we're talking the base, the double, the triple, and then like it's either the home run or the quadruple. I think with this set they call it the home run, but I know Upper Deck did that. They like would have 4 parallels with the hardest one either being called home run or quadruple. I don't have my checklist on hand, otherwise I'd give you some confirmations as we dialogue here. But this was a great ad. I was glad to finally get this card in the archive. I've been after this one for a while. This is 1999 Upper Deck Immaculate Perception triple number to 25. So this is an interesting card. This is 2001 Donruss Signatures series. This is the Hawaii Trade Conference parallel number to 25. So this was produced in 2002. Like they bought it back and then stamped it, and then it was offered as an exclusive for attendees at the Hawaii Trade Conference in 2002. At least that's been my understanding about how these were based on the stamp on the front of the card. Trade Conference parallels are interesting to me because they're of the way they were released. And most of these things are they're buybacks stamped. That's some low print run and then offered as exclusives at the shows. That's why I like them, because they have that unique sort of market entry. They're not pack issued by default, but they're essentially buybacks with like aftermarket printing. Well, it's kind of aftermarket because these companies are stamping them and then putting them back in the market, but the cards themselves are genuine. So this is the only one of this card I've ever seen. The gentleman who sold this, I think, was liquidating a pretty impressive collection. I think there was something else that he had that I wanted and I ended up not being able to get. I don't remember, but I just remember I'm trying to associate my memory of this. Again, I'm recording this in, well into 2019. We're in October of 2019. I've had a really busy year, but I wanted to get this done, and this card made the list because of how it's kind of uniqueness, sort of quality to it. I really dig this card. It's really great, and I want to talk about it. So the early 2000s were sort of winding out of the 90s kind of style of stuff, and we're focusing more into like relics and game use stuff. That's where the market sort of went those years. But the early 2000s, things were still kind of in that mindset of unique parallels and things, but a lot of products were being released. A lot of companies were releasing the game user relic thing. They were latching on to that. That was becoming a thing. And so I as you'll notice in my top 10 list this year for 2018 anyway, there's very little of that. Only because I prefer cards that are unembedded, if you will. I like stuff that's just stamped or autographed, and even fewer autographs. I just like stuff that's mainly just the card itself. If it has a stamp on it, great. Like this one, awesome. But there's nothing wrong with relics and autos. I like them to a degree, and depending on the card, I'm all about it. In fact, I've got an auto in this run we'll discuss here later. Anyway, this is an interesting card. This is a 2001 Donruss Signature Series, 2002 Hawaii Trade Conference Parallel to 25. So this is the autograph card I wanted to talk about. So this is 2014 Topps Tech. This is the magenta printing proof auto parallel number to 1. So I added this because I aggressively pursued Topps Tech in 2014. Like I put my heart and soul into trying to get the whole run, and there's still a couple cards I need. The rest of my need are one-of-ones, and I haven't seen them. But I had seen this card surface like a couple of years before 2018, and it was like $400. I'm like, man, I'm not going to pay $400 for that. There's no way. Pass. Forget it. It went off the market for a while, and I was like, man, $400 is just too much. I can't justify that purchase. Like, sorry. But I need that card. Maybe I can try to get it somewhere down the line. Well, fast forward to 2018, this card surfaces for like $1.50. And I was like, oh, that's much more reasonable. It's not cheap, obviously, but it's certainly not $400. And so, in fact, I think it was more than that looking back on it, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near $400. But I remember thinking like, it's where it is. And I probably won't get another chance to get this card. So just deal with it. Just make it happen. Find a way to get it. So I did find a way to get it, and I got an archive, and this was like awesome because all the one-of-ones that I've seen for this release I own. The only ones like the Galactic, I've never seen the Thomas Galactic Parallels, but I need those. There's like 4 or 5 different versions I still need, but this set was aggressive. There were so many different versions. I actually have a blog about it, an article if you want to go see. I have a gallery, like a visual single-piece gallery of all the different ones I have, and then in there are just like pockets of stuff I need, and I say which ones I need. I actually visualize which ones I need. You can go to radicards.com and just search Topps Tech, and you'll see it there. You can take a look at that article. Interesting stuff. So this is cool. I'm glad I finally got this. This is the 2014 Topps Tech autograph printing proof magenta parallel number to 1. I probably jumbled the title of that, but it says it there on the bottom there. You can see it. Oh, this card. What a great card to have. Gosh. 1995, Pinnacle. Gold artist proof. Featuring the big 4 from this year, Griffey, Piazza, Bagwell, Thomas. Now, okay, let's have a little discussion about these interesting, unique sort of test parallels, if you were. And they're not even really test parallels because they did find their way into packs, at least to my knowledge. So here's the thing. It's my understanding, and don't quote me on this, that Pinnacle in 1995 inserted these gold artist-proof parallels into that first pass of packs that went out the door, like that first couple cases. And then for some reason, that was it. And the rest of the parallels we've all come to know are the flat black artist-proof parallels. Still great cards, but not these really interesting gold foil parallels. So I first discovered the existence of this one when I was sitting in a lecture hall listening to some whatever entrepreneur talking about a business. I used to go to these like meetings on Wednesdays where I'd sit for an hour and listen to entrepreneurs discuss their business ideas. And sometimes the ideas just aren't good. And so I'd pull out my phone and just like surf whatever, eBay. And I remember finding this one while I was trying to like block out a really bad lecture. There's some lectures that were great. Yeah, I was there for a reason, right? But when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's like the hardest card to find, but like the gnarliest parallel of it. And I had known about these gold hollow foil artist-proof parallels from like many years back, but I had acquired one of the other Thomases of the 3 known versions that exist. Thomas is featured 4 times in the set. but there's one card in the set that it's not known if the gold artist proof parallel exists for that card. So I have like the other two, and I have a third one coming in transit. And so I will eventually have all three of the known examples that have this gold hollow foil parallel, in addition to their other versions. So when I had seen this, I was like, oh my gosh, this card is going to bring serious attention, because the basic artist proof of this, the normal pack issued artist proof of this, the one we've all come to know, the black artist proof, it does really well in market. Like, it's a $100 card, usually about $100 roughly. I was like, wow, this is a really rare example of this card. And the first one closed at like $1,600. I remember being in my house and looking at my phone and like teetering on the seconds, counting down the last. And I was like, $1,200? Can I do it? No, I don't want to spend $1,200. And then bang, $1,600. I'm like, man, that's no way. I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to get that card. And then some months pass. I actually know the gentleman who bought the original example. And some months pass, another one surfaced by the same seller, and I talked to my buddy who bought the first one. I was like, hey, you're going to try to go for this other one? And he had indicated he contacted the seller and said that the other one that he sold, that is being sold, is the last one he has. And then that one sold. And I think that one closed at like quite a bit less, like, $1,200 or maybe less than that even. I can't remember. I remember it was quite a bit less than $1,600. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to get this card. Like, 4 figures is just way, way high for these. I mean, they're rare, fine, but 4 figures is an awful lot to ask. And he had the other ones too, like the like other 2 Frank Thomases of these parallels, and he was selling, and they were doing really well in market. I was like, gosh, maybe I'll get one of the other 2 that I need, because I had acquired the checklist some years back. Well, fast forward to like 2018, and that was 2 years after, like 2 or 3 years after I had seen these start to sell. And by that time, they had sold enough to where they're like 2 or 3 copies of everything had sold, 4 maybe, to where when this one finally surfaced, I got it for under $200. Like, just think about that. You're the first buyer. You spend $1,600 on this card. And then 3 examples later, the last one sells for under $200. You got to be like upset. I would be upset. I'd be especially upset if the seller said that the second example was the last one that they have, and then they sell like 2 or 3 more. Oh, eBay sellers are funny. So I was glad that I was patient. I mean, I couldn't afford $1,600 out of the gate anyway, and $1,200 just wasn't going to happen either. So another thing about this hobby is, like, if you're patient, I mean, that is a serious skill to have, serious. So this was one of those instances where I was like, well, if I just wait, maybe there'll be another instance where I'll be able to get this card. Sure enough, 2018, this one was like $191, and I was like, man, what a great card to add. What an awesome, awesome card to add. When I first saw the basic artist proof version of this, the like normal standard black foil, the one we all know, and I saw the artist proof logo over Thomas's face, like half his mouth like that, it was like stopped me in my tracks. And I hate to use cliches because that's cliche, but I was stunned by the card and how its rarity. I never thought about it because I'd never seen the artist proof version. Now I have a couple copies of the original artist proof version, and then I have this one to add to my collection. It's just such a great addition to my collection. I love this set. I love this card. I love the players on it. This is the 1995 Pinnacle, card number 450, gold foil artist proof parallel. I don't know what the print run on these is. Probably very, very low. But there you have it. Oh, geez. This is an interesting card. A lot of us have probably scratched our head wondering when we'll find one for our player, and wishing that they were cheaper. So this is 1997 SPX Grand Finale. Okay. The difference between Grand Finale and gold is that the hologram on the front on the Grand Finale is gold. Hologram on the basic gold is silver. There is no serial number on these cards, although the print run is to 50. And it's because of that sometimes you'll find these in bargain bins. I found a Sammy Sosa for $1 at the 2015 National in a bargain bin. I was like, gosh, If I can only find a Frank Thomas for $1 in the bargain, because at the time I still needed this card. My example isn't of the greatest. The registry on the back is off. As you can see, the print is slightly off. It looks like they printed the black, like semi oval, like up a little bit. And so I've got, or like the black print has been like moved up the card a bit. I mean, whatever. I mean, I've seen better examples of this card, but this card is so hard to find that I'm not going to like make a big fuss about it. If I can get a replacement, that'd be great. But if not, then this is a great example just to keep in my archive. Now, I had wanted to get this grand finale for many years, and I had seen one sell for like $1,200 on eBay back in 2015. I was like, no way. There's no way that was a real sale. Not possible. And then another one surfaced and was like $600. I was like, still too high. Still way too high. And then another one surfaced and it sold, and another one. I mean, they surface from time to time. Like they're out there. And the sellers who know what they have will list them and let the market kind of decide, and they'll market them correctly. And some people will find these on eBay at low bins because the seller just doesn't know. Because nowhere on the card does it say grand finale, and there's no print run, and there's a gold parallel. So those of us who have pulled this, not knowing that, we might think that this is the normal gold parallel. This is why this card is sort of mysterious in that way. That's like interesting. Because had this had a print run on it in the back of it, it probably would sell much better. But because it doesn't, it's hit or miss in the sales. So this is the 1997 SPX Grand Finale number to 50. Now, if you want to see all these in a whole gallery all together, all the different parallels to identify what's what, just go to radicards.com and type in 97 SPX. And you'll see I have a blog post there where I show everybody all laid out in one place. You can see it all together, and I explain how to identify the different parallels. So there you have it. 1997 SPX Grand Finale, number to 50. Oh gosh, this card. Man, I have been battling this card since June. I think it was June of 2013. So here's a story behind this. You'll like this. Ready for this? Okay. Get out the popcorn, because this is like a really good story. Okay, so it was like summertime 2013. And I had just left a job, and I was like going through some interesting personal transitions. And I mean, all in all, it wasn't a horrible year. It was just a really strange year for me. Half the year was really odd, and the other half of the year was really enlightening. It was a very interesting dichotomy, breakdown of how my life was going at the time. Well, I'd been in contact with a seller, a Frank Thomas collector who was selling his collection. And I got in contact with, like, through mutual Frank Thomas collectors. And so I was like, what do you have? And he's telling me, hey, I've got this, and this. I've got this card with this pinnacle hole punch. I was like, wait. Can you describe the hole punch pinnacle card? He's like, yeah, it looks like the 1995 Score Gold Rush, but it's got that like pinnacle punch out thing. I was like, well, what do you want for it? He's like, I don't know, $30. I was like, done. Add it to my stack. And we negotiated for some other things. There was like a replacement Frank Thomas card with like the handwritten serial number on it. There was a 91 Topps David Justice Desert Shield and some other miscellaneous stuff thrown in. I think all in all the deal was like 100 and whatever. It's like $1 and something. And I was like, okay, here's my mailing address. I lived in LA at the time. So he ships the package. And I wait. And I wait some more. I check the tracking number. It says it was delivered. And I was like, oh, I don't see any mail. So I go and call him. I was like, are you sure? We double checked the shipping address, and it was right. And I go down to the post office. I was like, it's not the seller's fault now. I go down to the post office, and I was like, hey, this says delivered, but I never got the mail. And going to the post office to request customer service in LA is like impossible. It is impossible. People are busy. They don't care. They're not going to answer phone calls. They're like, their hands up. They're like, sorry, we erred and there was nothing we can do about it. Ugh. So this, what it came down to, this my package was misdelivered and they don't know where it went. So for all I know, this package was misdelivered and whoever got it threw it in the trash. So I talked to the seller. I was like, is there anything you can do for me? I paid him in friends and family because I trusted him. And he's like, no, man, there's nothing I can do. I was like, oh, man, I had like my heart sank because this card is hard enough to find. And then just thinking it was misdelivered and thrown in the garbage was like heartbreaking. Not to mention the other cards in the package that the other ones I just haven't seen. I don't know if I'll ever see that replacement card. Maybe never, because it might have been the only one in existence. So I called PayPal and explained the whole situation to them. And they said, I was like, is there anything you can do for me? And they said, well, because you sent the funds, friends and family, there's nothing we can do. But since this looks like it's the first time that this has happened to you, we can refund you like partially. And I was like, well, what is partially? He's like, well, half. I was like, I'll take it. Like anything to recover this huge loss. So I got half my money back. It was a total loss. I was heartbroken. And it's like for months, I thought about this package just being thrown in the garbage by being misdelivered to the wrong address and whatever. So frustrating. Mind you, this is summer of 2013. Okay. And here I am in October of 2019 talking about my top 10 list for 2018. So I had to wait 5 years to see this card again. 5 years. Okay, I thought about this card almost weekly for 5 years. I know it's kind of pathetic, right? But finally this card surfaces and I am super aggressive. Like I'm ready for battle. I have my armor on. I am going to win this card. I don't care what it takes. I paid handsomely for this example, thinking like, finally I got this card in the mail. Oh, finally. It finally came in. I explained this to the seller. I was like, here's the issue with me. Here's the problem. And I even explained it to him when he had it listed. I was like, explain to him. I was like, hey, would you be able to entertain an offer on this? Here's the issue that I had. He's like, no, man, I don't let this run. I was like, okay. So I had to pay dearly for this card. So they got it in the mail. Great. Awesome. Everything's good, right? So like a week later, another one surfaces. I'm like, oh, you just don't know what you don't know, And so that one sells for about $100 less than this one. I was like, okay, it's not too much of a sting. And then the third one surfaces like a month later. And there's another version of this card with the stamp upside down in the other corner, top left corner. And that one surfaced. And I was like, dude, I already spent so much money on this one. I can't get this other one, sadly. So that one surfaced and sold. And then a fourth one surfaced and it didn't sell like 2 passes through. And it finally sold for a $40 buy it now. And I'm like, my gosh. This thing about this hobby is you don't know what's going to surface. You just don't know. And so when something surfaces that you do need, great. You just don't think there's going to be a wave of them after the one you buy. You don't know. So I don't regret what I paid for this by any means. I'm just glad to knock it out of the ballpark. I know money is liquid. It comes and goes. I just don't like overpaying. I really don't like overpaying. And knowing what I paid for this in comparison to the $40 buy it now, I was like, man, could have saved me a lot of money. But I'm just glad to finally get it out of the way and be done with it and finally redeem, no pun intended, myself of this situation that took place back in summer of 2013. So this is the 1995 Score Gold Rush Parallel, but this is the Pinnacle Redemption Punched version. Now, the reason that these entered the market, and they only entered the market for a short time before Pinnacle stopped doing this, is that you'd collect the whole set of the Gold Rush for a team. You send it into Score. They'd hole punch the cards in the Score set, send that back to you, and the Platinum team set to you. This existed for a short time. And then they got kind of haphazard. They started doing this haphazardly, and they started putting the sheets in for the hole punch any which way, which is why you see the Pinnacle stamp on the bottom right or upside down on the upper left. And then they stopped doing it altogether, probably because it was time consuming, and then it was just added to shipping costs. They didn't want to deal with it. So these cards entered market for a very short time, and then they just that was it. Which is why they're so difficult to find. I've seen a few other players in and about various bargain bins over the years, but I mean, obviously, I just wanted the Frank Thomas. Now, I do have the 2 different versions of the stamped cards for the White Sox checklist, which ironically Frank Thomas isn't stated to be on, knowing he's the most important player on the team. But if you go to the museum and you type in, or you could click on the 1995 gallery and scroll through it, you can see it there, the 2 different versions. But even though I don't have the other version of this, I call them A and B, this being A. I'll have B. I may get it at some point, hopefully. That'd be great. If not, it's fine. This makes up for the loss that took place back in 2013, now 6 years ago. So anyway, I'm just going to talk about this because this is such an important card for my collection to add. That is like such a mentally taxing thing that happened to me back in 2013. I was glad to finally get one of these in the archive. So again, this is the 1985 Score Gold Rush Parallel. This is the Pinnacle Redemption Punched version. So there you have it. That's my top 10 Frank Thomas cards that I acquired in 2018. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a comment below. Let us know which one of these cards did you like the most. Which one of these cards that kind of resonated with your collection. Maybe there's a card in here that you felt was, also difficult for you to find of your player, or maybe there was one that you didn't know existed and you wanted to talk about that. Whatever the case, let me know what you think about this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in to Radicards TV on Radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Reno, and until next time, enjoy collecting. If you like this content, please subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy collecting.